voices, international perspectives. And I'll talk louder. Tonight we're just going to create kind of a lens to look through the LGBT community around the world and get some interesting stories for you. We have 4 panelists with us. We'll have them introduce themselves in a minute. I think that's all I wanted to say. So the format is like just an hour of formal questions, and then we'll get started with some Q&A from the audience. So we'll start with the introductions. Jingchao, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Hi, my name is Martin Chao, and I'm from China. I'm from the city called Xi'an in the middle of China, and I went to Shanghai for college. Now I'm doing a PhD program in Villanova University here at Philadelphia. And I want to thank Mike and David and my co-panelists for making this happen.
My name is Jeff Fowler. I'm in the TESOL program here at FIS. I returned from Madagascar in 2009. And I graduated from undergrad in 2007.
I'm Justin Mitzlaff. I actually don't live here. I'm just Boyko. I did Peace Corps in South Africa. I've been back since May of 2009.
I'm Jesse. Graduated at IEP last May. I came back from Romania in 2009.
All right, we'll get started with our formal discussion now. Would each of you just talk about your general experience in the country? I guess we'll start with Jingchao first. Just talk about, everyday life in China for the LGBT community.
Okay, so the main thing to mention is that we don't really have a lot of visibility as the LGBTQ community enjoy or suffer here and in the US, because it is strictly forbidden for Chinese media to mention anything about homosexuality or queer or not to mention transgender. So the thing that we focus on is to get as much as visibility as we can while promoting some of the acceptance of the public while protecting the privacy and perhaps the safety of the volunteers we have, and that's the general experience. But as to personal level, it is the family pressure that everyone needs to deal with first. The homophobic atmosphere in the society is not as severe as here, but the family pressure comes first.
I'll start since I'm sitting right next to Mike. It's generally safe to be gay in Madagascar. They have low visibility, like Jingchao was saying. There's no laws against homosexuality. There's no laws supporting homosexuality. They're very quiet community. You don't see a whole lot of them. Most of the men who have sex with men are married women. They have babies. They have families. That's just what you do, and then you can fall with the men all you wanna. And like she said, there's low visibility.
I think my experience was much different. I was in a country that definitely was westernizing. So there was like pride parades in Joburg and Cape Town. Cape Town is known as like the gay Mecca of Africa. So a lot of people went to those areas. But once you left the city, it was a completely different experience. A lot of people would say they were bisexual, or they would say they were straight, but they would still have sex with men. I talked to some people, and just the thought of telling their parents was astonishing. They couldn't even believe that I told my parents that I was gay. So once you leave the city, it was a completely different experience. And a lot of it also plays into apartheid, which is a very big, huge history of South Africa in general. A lot of that played into my experience.
Romania has very similar situations. There are two major cities, Bucharest, the capital, and also Cluj-Napoca. Two cities has very good history of gay pride or gay film festivals going on every year. But outside where I live in Romania, which is a small town, actually bigger than Monterey, people are not as accepting. And it's even though it's a European country, it's kind of one of the five most conservative countries in Europe. And 80% of people identify themselves as Orthodox religion. So that has a lot to do with their ideology on how they should behave and how they proceed with things like that.
We'll move on to our next question. Jingchao, I know you kind of elaborated on this a bit, but just tell us a bit more about the atmosphere for the LGBT community in China.
Okay, so the atmosphere for LGBT community in China definitely has a big turn when internet became popular. And after that, a lot of big gay or lesbian or just queer websites came into being, and people start to switch from secret nightclubs or parks to internet. Then it seems like we have a kind of a boost for LGBT people communicating with each other. So that's kind of a good thing. And the bad thing is that the family pressure still holds, still controls most people. So most people are not out to their parents, and most people are still forced into marriage.
Let me say first, as a white person, it was completely acceptable for me to be gay. They had, I mean, you're weird anyway. You're white, you're weird, you do things, whatever. It's fine. For a Malagasy person to be gay is a totally different story. And again, like I said, it's not that there's violence against gay people in Madagascar. It's that if you come out, which nobody would ever do, you'd be ostracized. You could be disowned. You'd most likely be disowned. They have a very complex system of taboos, and one of the taboos would be homosexuality. And the real fear is that you're going to upset the ancestors. The ancestors will curse you, and they really believe in these taboos and following them. So they would never think of coming out. So your options are to go to the city and prostitute yourself, and that's okay because the sex workers kind of have their own taboo system because they don't have families, so it doesn't matter what they do. The other choice is just to live with a wife and children and have a little bit of fun on the side. Yeah, that's it.
So when apartheid ended in '94 in South Africa, one of the laws that came intact was pretty much making everybody free, and they added LGBT. I can't really say T because I never really experienced or met people who identified as transgender when I was there, but they were given every right that everybody else did because they didn't want to have that apartheid feeling anymore. So everybody was supposed to be equal, and even though they have those laws, it doesn't mean that people agree with it. And when I first got there, there was a lot of rapes going on with lesbians. Men were just brutally raping them, thinking that it will change them to become straight women. And it was becoming a pretty significant problem, especially out in the townships where a lot of the black people were forced to live during apartheid. So it really brought a lot of fear, especially for the lesbian community, on being out and open. In the village, like I said, it was very, very down low. And somehow I managed to meet almost every down low guy that lived in one of my villages, and they all wanted to date me and thought I would bring them back to America. So it was very different. Yeah.
The political atmosphere in Romania is very interesting. Since the communist regime, the laws been going back and forth from like you can do it in public, you can do it public, you can do it private. 96, they just moved to like you can do it whatever, if you have a home, it's fine. As long as you don't have public display or it's not a scandal, you're okay. Year 2000, they fully decriminalized homosexuality. One, because they were pressured by European Council for joining the EU. Second, it was passed shortly before the openly gay U.S. ambassador, his arrival. It's still kind of fun. It's kind of funny that Bush administration find an openly gay ambassador similar to the one of the most closest ally that we have. 2005 was the first gay pride in the capital city, Bucharest. However, that gay pride was met with another demonstration organized by this organization called Noua Dreapta. Literal translation is New Right. It's kind of the far-right political organization. Their stance kind of make the Tea Party look like a Green Party. I'm not kidding. And what happened in 2005, the city Bucharest allowed the gay pride to go on. However, they had to clash with opposite organizations, and they were kind of meetings, and the parade was kind of disrupted for a while. And in response to that, one of the very conservative Romanian party in 2007 trying to put on the law to ban, specifically trying to ban gay pride in Romania. However, that was unsuccessful. And that party next year lost every seat in parliament, which is good. And so far, there's no legal recognition for same-sex marriage, and gay people also cannot adopt, but lesbians can have kids through artificial insemination. Interesting. And yeah, that's pretty much another word.
Jesse, can you talk more about the EU thing? I didn't hear about that. You mentioned something about the EU and...
Well, Romania joined the European Union in 2007, but before that, all the preparation work, in 2000, the European Council basically forced them, pressured them to say, okay, there's this list of human rights issues, you have to comply with the European Union standards, so year 2000, they fully decriminalized homosexuality.
We'll get into that a bit more. The next one is about political recognition. So our next question, what support or political recognition, if any, exists for LGBT citizens? Jingchao, if you'd like to start.
Okay. So China's situation is a bit different from other countries, that the government seems like they don't want to recognize any existence of LGBT. There's nothing mentioning LGBT in the law or in like the national media. Even when the Brokeback Mountain won the Oscar, the national media reported like the movie depicting the friendship between two men. So political recognition, no. But political pressure, also no. And as to support, we actually have some support from media, as media are becoming more and more influenced by internet, traditional media like newspaper, and so it's more and more influenced by the internet, and more young people getting into media, and that helps a lot. So that's the external support to the community. And also community provides a lot of support to individuals, and as organizations we support each other. We have like skill training camps, we have like touch-based kind of conference every year. So it's kind of a lot of support.
Similar to China, there's no recognition, they don't exist. Nothing in the laws about them, we don't talk about them. except there's no support, there's no camps or workshops or anything like that. They just don't exist.
In the bigger cities in South Africa, I know in Durban, Cape Town, and Joburg, Pretoria, they all had gay and lesbian centers that people could go to. Had tons of the two I went to. They had tons of great material for people to read on. Things like PFLAG did not exist. Politically, as I said, apartheid, after it had ended, they were all given equal rights. But even with a lot of the hate crimes that were going on, nothing was being done.
Okay, I guess out of full country, Romania has a very good situation. And well, as I said before, it's allowed to be homosexual in Romania. And but still there's no rights for marriage, there's no rights for adoptions. But different from the US and the UK, they're actually going through the debate for a law that allow a man who has sex with men to donate blood. And that's something actually very surprising for them, because their court actually ruled that they had a ban on that one, but then the court ruled it's unconstitutional to like discriminate based on the sexual orientations. And Romania also, even though the public at large is very opposite of homosexuality, but the government made a series of law actually specifically protecting sexual orientations. A lot of media is being fined heavily because they have being openly making fun of the homosexuals, and employees being fined for discriminating employees because they're gay and lesbians. So Romania is actually making a lot of progress in these situations, but even that, still the religious sector is still kind of opposite to it.
We heard some of the next question in the stories we've heard already, but if the panelists could just elaborate a little more. What difficulties does the community face? Jingqiao, we'll start with you again.
Okay, so one of the biggest difficulties for us is that, so we know China is the most populated country in the world, and with whatever media we can get, we can only reach to a very small portion of the population. And to the LGBT people in the countryside, in a more rural area, we just don't know how to reach them. And there must be some LGBT people there, but it's just, it makes us feel very powerless when we think that we'll probably never be able to reach them and to just know them. So, okay, that's one thing. And another thing is that though there's not as much as hate crimes, because it's not part of Chinese culture that you just hit people you don't like on the street. Not saying that's part of any culture. But the Chinese traditional culture puts a lot of value in family. So, and we have a saying that the worst thing you can do to your family is not to give them kids. So that's like a big obstacle. A lot of parents actually, I've heard this kind of story many times. So a lot of parents actually say, it's okay for you to be gay, you just get married and give me some kids and you can do whatever you want. And so that's kind of hard. And also visibility. And one thing I forgot to mention, the last question, is that as HIV spreads in China and it gets more and more severe right now, not only because the main spreading of HIV is a result of blood, illegal blood trading. And because that's going on, so the gay men community are getting some support from the government because they need to talk about safer sex. But the lesbian community basically gets nothing because, well, there's basically no harm you can do. So we are just completely invisible, and that's the thing we're working on.
Sounds like China and Madagascar share a lot of similarities. I think the difficulties that we face are twofold. I think the first is raising awareness that gay people exist in Madagascar. I almost want to say we need a stonewall. They need to just like, yeah, hey, we're out, we're queer, let's do a big, huge pride festival, and everybody will have to pay attention to us. The other one that's very serious is the spread of STDs. Because they're not using condoms, they have no idea about safe sex, they're going out on their wives and having unsafe sex and then bringing that back into the marriage, and then continually perpetuating the cycle, and they still don't think that those STDs exist, and the white people are making it up so that they won't have 20 children, and we have to face that obstacle before we can even start talking about gay people going out and having sex, and now we need to wear condoms, and like she said, the worst thing you can do is not have children. The worst thing you can do with your family is not have children. So we need to raise a lot of awareness and promote safe sex. So you should let them do that.
Definitely HIV is probably the biggest issue in South Africa. A lot of them have the notion that it happens from sex, but when I was there, they really didn't talk about gay sex. So a lot of them were like, oh, well, we get it if we have straight sex or regular sex, as they would define it. And so there really wasn't this concept if I have a sex with a man, there's a good chance I'm going to get HIV, and then spread it to my girlfriend. So that's something they definitely need a lot of education on. And I think, there's awareness, but I think it needs to be more of acceptance. I lived in 2 different towns, and one of them was an Afrikaner or a white town, and there was a lot of gay people in that town somehow, and nobody accepted them. And if you had anything else that put you even further as weird or not right, they would really shun you. So some of those people really had deep emotional problems, and I think we all know what it's like to be in the closet. And I think a lot of that plays into it, of them never getting to fully accept themselves, but have their community accept them. So there's a lot of drinking and drugs and unprotected sex issues going on because they hurt, and we all know what that's like.
Similar in Romania, it's also HIV/AIDS issues. But one thing is, the community is still not really accepting homosexualities, and a lot of people still going on the ground and sneak around to have sex and to find people. But lucky for Romania is there are a lot of NGOs, and especially the ones that are funded by Western influences. Also, Peace Corps has been working with them to educate a lot of public, especially to the gay events, and to talk about like, HIV and AIDS and the use of condoms.
All right. Now we're getting more into like the personal questions, your own personal experiences within the country. Things that are a little interesting. How did you conduct yourself in the environment? Did you change your behavior? So Jingchao, since you're a native to China, did you feel, I guess, that you had to change your behavior either here or in China because of who you were?
Not really. So when I got into college, in the first month I got into college, I bumped into this group of crazy people doing vagina monologues, and I became best friends with them. So all my friends in college are very accepting, and like half of them are gay already. So I don't really feel the need to change whatever thing I want to. So it's kind of good. And not here either, though I go to a Catholic university. But in Pennsylvania, in Philadelphia, it's not. So as I said, coming out to our parents can be really difficult, which I have not actually done. So I'm feeling that it's more difficult to like really be open to our parents, and that's the hard part for me. But so my academic focus is on feminism and gender theory. So I actually talked a lot with my parents about gay stuff and all the lesbian conferences I went to, and they just assumed that as part of my studies. So yeah, the family part is hard, but the society, I think as long as it's a more educated young people community, it's okay to be yourself.
I started by changing myself. The Peace Corps told me when I was in training not to be gay, not to be out, you have to express who you are. And I did for at least the first year, if not longer. And it became very hard as people asked me daily, why don't you take a woman? Why don't you have all these women for you? You can have them. They were just like throwing them at me. And it was hard because they wanted a reason why I didn't want to be with those women. And I couldn't very well say that just because I was gay. So I just had to make up stupid excuses. And they were always talking about how sexually frustrated I must be. And I mean, they were right, but now they weren't offering any suggestions that were realistic for solving that problem. So I didn't hide my feminism, like, my feminine characteristics, because that doesn't really throw a red flag to them. So I can be effeminate without being gay. Unless I encountered the cosmopolitan Malagasy people, and they'd be like, "Oh, you're kind of effeminate. Are you?" And I'd be like, no, whatever. And then I couldn't do it anymore. So I was like, I guess I was like 15 months in country, and I started telling a couple of people. In my village, I started telling a couple more people, and they were all really cool about it. And I was like, well, why am I suffering then? And so by the time I left, I think pretty much everybody knew, and I didn't have one negative response to it. So.
Yeah, when you apply for Peace Corps and they find out you're gay, and they pretty much tell you to go back in the closet. And I was like, oh, that will be easy. I'm already out. It won't be hard to do this for 2 years. And I was very, very wrong. During training, I really bonded a lot with the family I was living with. And it just felt weird not sharing with them a very big part of my life. But I was also very afraid of losing this wonderful connection I had made with, especially my mom there. Once I moved to Metz, which was the village I was living in, it was the same. I was very closeted, and then one day my sister came up and she's like, "I need to talk to you." And I was like, "Okay." And she goes, "You have very colorful underwear. Are you gay?" And I was like, "Well, actually, I am." And we used to bond in my room. We would sit in my room and drink vodka and Coke and talk about all the cute boys in the village. I found out other people in the village were, I guess, down low. Some of them identified as bisexual. So then all of a sudden I was getting all these text messages about people wanting to come over and date. I was like, no. And then when I moved to the White Town, I put myself back in the closet because it didn't feel the same. Like, just the way, they already judged me a lot because I was helping the Black community, and they were very, very rude and mean to me about that. So I didn't want to have the gay thing be a new thing until I had met a couple of gay people in town. So then, of course, people found out, And then it ended up being the reason I came home early, because I was assaulted.
When I first joined Peace Corps, I didn't put that on my applications. I didn't say anything about my sexuality. However, when we get to countries during the pre-service training, one day we have a diversity training, which we have in-country volunteers talk about LGBT issues in the group, and then that's the time that everybody in the Peace Corps group came out. And so the story I was talking about in 2005 with the gay pride incident, that was the first story that we were told in there. And also in 2005, there were Peace Corps volunteers at the scene of the protest. And we also were being told about a few other stories, how the people were treated in public and whatnot. And so that was kind of like our first experience on what, like kind of like awakening moments that was what we're facing. I didn't really change too much in my behavior, partly because I'm one Asian guy went to a country that's predominantly white and everybody expecting getting American who's blonde hair, blue eyes, and there I am showing up, black hair, brown eyes, and I'm like, okay, and it throws them off. I began with, so they didn't know what to do with me. I didn't know what to do with myself at the time, so I'm kind of like, okay, just act normal and won't stare at some guys. So I mean, that's the experience I had, and it was kind of weird because when we first, after we finished our training in country, we were distributed to our different sites, and I stayed with the host family, who happened to be my counterpart's family. And about 2 weeks in, she basically expressed how much she doesn't like gay people. So that kind of stopped everything right there. Slowly, I did come out to a few people because the internet, online dating. So I was able to meet a few people in town, and also met my ex at the time. So he lives in all of our different cities. I didn't really change too much, but I was able to kind of come out a little by a little to people.
Jingqiao, the next one the next question is about the most memorable experience you've had. You can talk about both China and the United States if you'd like to share your experience in both countries.
Okay. So I assume people know about a TV movie called Prayer for Bobby.
No.
Prayers for Bobby. So it's a movie made by, I guess, NBC, and it's about a mother of a gay man who commits suicide in an early age, and his mother used to be kind of fundamentalist Christian, and so out of her fear that her son might end up in hell, she starts to seek help, and finally she became this LGBT activist. And so that's an American movie. And my kind of favorite memory is that we had this little kind of LGBT center thing. It's not called the LGBT center, it has a nickname, it's called the Closet in Shanghai. It's like a small space where we can have some activities, little talks, conversations on this issue. So we have like weekly movies there when I was in Shanghai. And one day we showed Prayer for Bobby because it appeals to Chinese people a lot because it deals with the family matter about how your mother accepts you or not. So we have like 17-something people that day. Most of them don't know each other because we put the notice online and random people came. But after the movie, there are like more than 30 people around the same dustbin crying, using like a whole box of napkins. And like that is a moment that you feel that it's kind of a right thing you're doing, showing this movie, so that these 30-something people crying together, though they don't know each other, now they know this is their place. Like that's a really sentimental moment for me. So things like that kind of became an inspiration for us to keep on doing activities like this.
Mine's not sentimental. One time I went up to one of the bigger cities for a meeting or something, and I'd been there for over a year. I was so I'm walking through this city, and I'm going through the market, just kind of taking a walk, and everybody comes up to you. What do you want? What are you looking for? They're at the market. They want you to buy stuff, and I was like, I'm looking for snake, and they're like, what do you mean? And then more people are coming up to me. They're like, what are you looking for? I'm looking for snake. And I'm like, I'm looking for snake. And they're like, what do you mean? I was like, snake. Hey guys, come here! Come here! He's looking for snake. And then like all the guys from that entire market, like they collected all of them, and they're like. Like, oh, cool. And then like, they talked to me for like hours. I sat out there for like 3 hours and just chatted with these guys. And every time like the women would come, they'd be like, no, shh, go away. Or the children would come, they would like shoot them away. So it was like all the guys wanted to talk to me about like what it was like to have penis. And they started to talk about, and I was like, I want a big snake. So they're like, well, there's this guy up at the top of the hill, he owns a hotel, and he has a really big snake. And I was like, oh, well, okay. And then they're like, and then there's this guy that lives in my town. He has a pretty big snake, but he's kind of crazy, so you don't want to go there. And so then I came back like 2 months later, and I walked through there, and they're like, there's the guy who likes snakes. And they're like, come here. We found a new guy for you. And I was like, oh, okay. They're like, really big snake. I'm like, great. And then I'm walking down, and this like old Indian guy. He's like, psst, psst. He's like, you're looking for snake, right? I was like, yeah. And he's like, well, I know this guy. I'll introduce you to him. So that was my funny story. I just every time after that I walk through that town, the same market. Every time I walk through, they're like, oh, come here. Like I'm their best friend. The entire town, the entire market knows me. All the guys in the market know me. And that's all they know about me. That's what I like dick. So snake or dick, whatever.
Is that how it's translated in that
That's
language?
the slang term. That's why I called it that.
Okay,
That's
okay.
why I chose that word on purpose, because I knew I could
Right.
use it for, I could cop out and be like, no, I really wanted a snake. Or I could be like, I do want dick. I could use it both ways without, like, it's face saving. So, no, I chose that on purpose. It's slang for dick.
Thank you.
I have a couple of stories. My language trainer during our first 3 months definitely had bad perceived notions of lesbian and gay people. And so when I finally told her, I was like, well, I'm gay, and some of the stuff you say is really insulting. Like, we sat down for a long time and had a conversation, and it changed her whole world. And like, we're still in contact on Facebook, and we talk here and there. So it's good to see how it changed her, but she also changed my life a lot too. Definitely like talking to my sister all the time about boys in the village while drinking Coke and vodka. It was a lot of fun. Probably something Peace Corps very much discourages, but whatever. The text messages. I had one guy come up to me and said, I heard you have a right-hand boyfriend. Can I be your left-hand boyfriend? And I was like, I don't understand. He goes, well, you can hold his hand with that hand, and then you can hold my hand with that hand. And I was like, yeah, no. And one time when I was living in the White Town, I saw this guy at the supermarket, and he kept looking at me. So I tried to go and talk to him and disappear. And I saw him probably 2 weeks later. He was driving by and he waved, so I followed the car, and we ended up going on a date. And it was really nice, but I never know what happened to him. But yeah, it's very different to be in a completely different country and have to be almost in and out of the closet all the time. Because you really were more afraid of ruining relationships there than I felt here. Because they were a lot more special and meaningful in so many ways.
Okay, so I went into Romania as an environmental volunteer, but my secondary project, I'm working with orphanage that majority of the kids have HIV and AIDS or contracted with different STDs. There are kids when I was there ranged from 18 months to 19 at the time. However, the sad thing about this orphanage is the majority of the kids didn't contract HIV/AIDS through sex. They contracted through hospital. But a bunch of teenagers in the orphanage, that's just not a good thing. So there were 2 boys who kind of had like abusive relationship back and forth for a while, and then they both were just doing a lot of unprotected sex. One of them was interested to me when we were doing individual projects. I was able to talk to him a little bit about a few things, but I didn't get to talk to him much. That was kind of eye-opening for me because it's just slowly finding out both of them were gay. At the same time, I actually didn't come out to them. And it was a little bit, when I actually thought about it, trying to get in contact with them and doing that, it was a little bit too late because one of them passed away, which makes it amazing. So that was, I guess if you say peaceful experience, that's probably one of my regrets. But I was able to talk to one of the girls in there. She brought it out to me at one time. My ex and I used to go to the village, to the orphanage, playing with the kids, taking care of the kids. She brought it out to me once. To this day, I'm not sure she knows about me or not because she never directly asked me. But she just all of a sudden said, gay people are not normal. I was just kind of like, this is not good. But yeah, we were able to have a talk, and I was actually able to refer her to a counselor at the local high school who is very open-minded about being gay, and I think she knows about it too. So I didn't really have a follow-up story on that one, but I think she's at least willing to reach out, and I was happy that I can help her with that.
Xingqiao, what hope do you have for progress in China and in the United States? That's a valid question.
So I'll talk about China because that's mainly where I do most of my work in the community. So as I said, there's no huge homophobia part in Chinese traditional culture. So we don't have that kind of resistance as most people with a Christian background have. So it's kind of good in that way. And it's a huge population, so that's kind of a vast market. So every time I do a talk or a workshop, and people do come up to me and said, what you said just changed my view. I'll be nice to them if I meet any of them. So every time I do that, I think that gives me a lot of inspiration, and I think that's what we can do for progress. We change 5 people at a time, and that will end up a lot of people, and they will change people, So, yeah. And apart from personal promotion, and also the legal part, we wish there will be one day the law against discrimination based on sexual orientation, and also the law against and yeah, media visibility. That's what we want the most.
I have a lot of hope for progress in Madagascar, but I think they have a lot of way to go. I think once they get to the point where people are aware that they exist, they're going to have to go through a lot of stuff that a lot of the other countries have gone through, as far as the time when it's going to be hard for gay people. It's not really hard for gay people like it will be once they're out and open, once they deal with the conflict and the social revolution part of it, and they'll have to start dealing with the discrimination that they haven't had to deal with. And I don't think they'll ever get violent, but I think they'll have to go through that process. But because of how well I was received once I did start coming out in my village, and especially amongst the young people, I think there is a lot of hope, and because they're starting to be exposed to television from the West, from Europe and the United States, they are starting to become aware that it even exists, and most of them view homosexuality like just another thing, they don't really care. A lot of people are aging younger, so I'm really hopeful that that generation, once their parents die off, they'll kind of be the leaders of that country, and they'll kind of say, it doesn't really matter to us. It's not really a big deal.
I definitely think there needs to be a lot of education and awareness and acceptance. And acceptance also with the gay community and learning to accept yourself, because that really is the biggest change of all. But being that I lived in South Africa, I think those issues are at the bottom of their list of what things they need to make progress with.
I have a lot of hope for Romania. I mean, with the information spread through the internet, and with the younger generation are more and more accepting and more open-minded toward gay communities, things are like looking bright for them. And a few years ago, they actually launched the first gay TV channel. It's online only. It's not through normal channels. They don't have anything like the printed media or anything. They used to have a magazine, but they kind of stopped it. But having something is a good thing, and they're still making progress. They have a lot of NGOs working very passionately on this issue, so they're going to make a lot of progress.
All right, at this time, I'd like to invite the audience to ask any questions that they might have for our panelists. So, if anyone has any questions. Caitlin.
I have a question. This is for Jeff. So, you said that people were not really talking about like being gay, like you were, white, so it was okay or whatever. But then you also said that it was common for people to go out on their lives and, or I don't know if they were saying they were bisexual or if they were just, doing that. But if nobody was talking about it, how did you find out that they were doing it?
Oh,
or that it was common?
No, you're right. They don't talk about it. So I never found it from them.
Uh-huh.
I found out from other Peace Corps volunteers who had had sex with gay men.
Okay.
And then they had said that those Malagasy men had told the Peace Corps volunteers that this is frequent in their community.
Okay.
But they weren't talking to me about it.
Okay.
That's a fair question.
I was just...
And they're not gay. They're straight. They're just having sex with men.
Right.
Because
So...
Well, some countries,
Anyways.
there's no notion of what gay is. So there's
Right,
no
right.
word or vocabulary, so it's not a concept they talk about.
Right, well I think, Jeff, you kind of hit on that too when you were saying that they haven't really had to deal with the discrimination yet, because it's not an issue yet. It's not
Right.
something that people realize is a real thing.
Right.
But
Exactly.
I guess I'm trying, like, I'm having difficulty understanding this if people are not talking about it, but they're going, and like, if a man somehow, and in the examples you've given, if they somehow, there's got to be some sort of social pressure for them to think that they got to marry a woman and then go behind that woman's back. It's not like they're like, oh, hey, honey, I'm going to go hang out with so-and-so, and then I'll come back to you. Like, there's obviously some sort of, there's motives behind their actions, and so I'm wondering if that does stem from fear of discrimination. So maybe it's already happening, and they're just not aware of it. Or on a different level.
Well, I did mention the ostracization and the just being disowned. They're aware that they will be disowned from their families.
So that it is, in a way, it is like on the surface, because otherwise how would they know, like, how would people be aware they would be disowned if they come out of the closet? I mean, it's gotta be out there, otherwise how would they be aware that they would not be part of society?
Yeah, and
I think maybe
you're
it's
right.
just- it's
No,
just
you're
a
right. I
reflection
think,
of the extreme oppression that they're experiencing.
yeah, I think a lot of it just comes through the discussions that our parents have about what the ancestors expect of you. So I think they don't say directly towards them like you can't be gay, but they say, here are the list of ancestral expectations, and you will abide by them. If you do not abide by them, you will be discommunicated, you will be disowned, and so nobody questions it, nobody pushes it, and nobody talks about it because they're afraid of what their ancestors will do, and because they know their parents will pick them out.
And a lot of it, I know in South Africa, a lot of it was the role you played. So like if you were a bottom, you were the low of the low.
Right.
But then if you were a top and you had sex with women, you were like way up there. But then some guys, they don't perceive themselves as gay, but they're just getting a blowjob from a man. And there was a lot of them who went just to get oral sex from a man. And they're like, I'm not doing anything gay because it's happening to me. So
They have, in Madagascar, by where I live, they have this village of outcasts. So that's what they do. They just send you all to the outcast village, and nobody goes there. They don't get any services. They don't get any resources. You walk past them as fast as you can. So it's the gay people, the people who they believe have sex with dogs, even though they don't. So if you're perceived to be an outcast like that, you know you're going there. You know if you do something against the ancestors, yeah, it's just in your mind that you're going to be sent there, and you don't want to be there. So that's why they know without having to have that discussion, because they know their ancestors disagree with it, and they know when you disobey the ancestors, you're either going to die, or you're going to have to go out to that outcast village.
This is a real place, or
It's a real
just a
place.
story they tell you?
No, it's a real place. I've been by it. I've never stopped there because I wouldn't have been able to go back to my village if I had stopped there, but it's a real place.
I have very limited exposure to this, but when I hear people talk about the LGBT people and having sex is such a dominating part of the discussion, and I'm just wondering if you're truly in a relationship, I don't care if it's straight or gay, but I'd like to think sex isn't all there is to this relationship, so I'd like to ask all of the panelists just to tell me off the top of your head what's the most important thing in a relationship, a romantic relationship.
Jean Chow, did you hear that?
Well, that's pretty personal. Well, I guess like mutual support. That's very important to me. But well, honestly, I think why that is such a huge part of discussion is that like we are here together not because we have anything else in common, just that we have desire to the same sex. So like that's the same issue here. So that may lead to the phenomenon you observe.
I think the most important thing in a relationship is a partnership, that you work together, like collaboration.
and the communication, and the support.
Trust. Caitlin.
Sorry.
No. Sorry.
I just have a comment, Yali, about what you said, and I think, at least the way I see it, I think that sex becomes such a huge part of it because I feel like maybe people think that it's the sex that's unnatural. It's not the fact that a man could love another man or a woman could love another woman, but it's that a man would have sex with another man. Because it was originally, supposed to be about creation and about, you know what I mean? You can't have a baby having sex with another man.
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean? So I think that's...
Yeah, like why there's people have such a negative impression on like gay people or lesbians, like
Right.
how they have sex.
Right. Well, I mean, at least the way I see it, maybe that is why it is.
It's also the fact, I think, that where gay communities are not accepted, I think the only thing for a gay person to do with another gay person is to have sex. It's not like you can go to the movies or create an association or go to a restaurant, the only thing that you can actually do with a gay person that is a gay activity is sex. That's why it is the main driving force at the beginning. And then when communities are more established, then when it gets into the mainstream, that's where other activities surrounding gayness start, I think.
I mean, even in a gay relationship, you can't go to the restaurant that goes straight couples would do. And stuff like that. I don't really see that should be.
In some places you can.
Well, I mean, not open because so.
Yeah, I mean, being openly gay in some cases is so hard that the only thing that you can actually do, that you can actually share with a gay person is sex.
And in public, you're friends, and in the bedroom, you're boyfriends.
Exactly, that's what
I think it also depends on the perception of the country. In Romania, it's kind of interesting because when we first got there, everybody's were just off. Because Romanian men, can speak of it, men have an interesting way is that they would sit on the train, they would sit really like close to each other. And this is my experience. I was looking at 2 high school kids, and it was hilarious. I was just sitting there. So they're like over there, and they're just sitting next to each other, the shoulders touching shoulder, and they're playing with each other's cheek. In public, 2 boys. I was like, is those 2 gay, or those 2 not gay, or what is going on? And it turned out they're my 2 students, and it was kind of cool. But yeah, so my ex and I, in Romania, we went out to different places. We went to big cities, we went to small towns, we went to restaurants, movies, and in public, it's just 2 of us. Most of the time, people don't really suspect anything, or if any, I mean, Romanians generally are very gentle people, and even if they feels anything, they probably won't do anything about it. But I really think I have to put somewhere environment.
I think the question kind of came up, sorry for that, about if it's not being talked about, then how do you know that the men are going to, like, that you can have sex with other men? I think like you were saying that you walk around holding hands with dudes, and then you go to the club and you're grinding on dudes because that's what dudes do in the club in Madagascar, and then and then you get all hot and bothered, and then that's how it all falls into place, and then you don't talk about it ever again. So I think that's how that's why it's confusing, because it's so different than the way it happens in Europe.
I think there's also in this conversation about sex among gay people, I think that I'm hearing a little bit of an assumption that heterosexual society is not totally organized around and driven by sex. Anybody with eyes cannot fail to notice that we live in a totally sexualized culture. And that includes it, right? But in many ways, in hetero society or in hetero culture or whatever, in many ways that sexuality or sexual desire is often channeled into other sort of areas that may appear to be more acceptable or make them invisible. I mean, I don't know if anyone's ever been to a wedding, for example, a straight wedding, where there's all kinds of crazy rituals that the heterosexual rituals that people are supposed to do, including, and this is not universal, I'm not saying every society in the world does this, but I've been to weddings where like the men are expected to, and this is in my family, but maybe this says something about my family. I've been to weddings where like there's like, this funny thing where like men are supposed to sort of simulate oral sex on the bride as if they're actually going under her dress, and it's this kind of joke, right? So I think that there's a little bit of an assumption that straight society is not. Right? Also, if I could, I wanted to ask Jing Chao a question, if that's okay.
Jing Chao, can you hear? Can you hear Scott? Jing Chao.
Oh, hi.
Can you hear?
Stop that for a second.
Well, I wanted to ask a question, which is that listening to the really interesting stuff about China that you were talking about, and then listening to Jeff say that it seems like Madagascar and China have a lot of things in common, which they may in some ways. I wonder if it's possible that you actually painted a slightly bleaker picture of gay reality in China, or of social conditions for LGBT people in China. I mean, you do have in China, for example, you have very respected people from society, for example, Li Yinhe, who go to the capital and they openly, in very legitimate public spaces, argue passionately for gay marriage in China. In many big cities, I mean, China's a huge country, this is not the whole country, but there's plenty of cities in China. There's Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, where you can see gay bars with gay men spilling out into the streets with their arms around each other. You know, Beijing now has a Beijing Gay Center, right? So, you know, I certainly don't question for 1 minute the types of social pressures that people face and the type of isolation and so on. But I do wonder if maybe the picture is not quite as bleak as the impression that we might have been given. I wonder if you can comment on that.
Yeah, thank you. So I don't think my picture is bleaker because with people like Ying who is a sociologist who works specifically on gender sociology, and then people like Jingjing, you might know, who's a transgender woman who enjoys huge publicity. And yes, I mean, they do have some visibility, but they also suffer huge stigmatization online, which is unbelievably cruel. And so it's kind of a mixed up thing. So yes, some young people are accepting, and at the same time, some young people are just brutal to these people you just mentioned. And to the public thing, so yes, in major cities in China, you can see gay couples now, but first, a lot of people don't have the awareness. Like if two women walk on the street hand in hand, no one will suspect they're lesbian couple. Like people will think they're just good friends. That's how things are. And also, a lot of times, like I used to, when I was in college, I used to have an app, and we just go in campus and hand in hand, and no one came up to reproach us like you filthy people here. But I know that people are talking about them, right? Like there's rumor and gossiping going on, and it's just, you know, Chinese people can be really hiding their opinions of other people. So so like I said, I don't really think there are huge social pressure on LGBTQ people in China, but the worst thing that we have to face is the pressure from families. A lot, like my parents, they are really okay with other people being gay, but I don't know if they'll still remain calm when I come out.
Thank you.
I have another question for Xing Zhao. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about your experience as a woman and as a feminist in the LGBT community, because I think lesbians and bisexual and transgender women are often sort of the less visible letter in that acronym. And I was wondering if you could just talk about your experience as a woman.
My experience as a woman and a woman's experience?
Yeah, your experience as a woman in the LGBT community in China in particular.
So the thing I've been working on is basically the queer women community in China. So, and one of the problems that you actually touched on is that feminism is not really recognized in China, which is weird. Like, lesbian community in China don't recognize the contribution of feminist theory, and that's odd. Like, what else can contribute? Feminist philosophy is not a thing in China. Even now, when I go back to China, my friends will ask me, feminist philosophy, is that a thing, or is that just something you make up? And I'm like, both. But so what I really want to do is to bring these theory and these insights and all this experience from the country back to China Latin community, which I think will be a very rich source for us in China, and which is something we are not really doing right now, like we went too little. So, I think the power of Guatemala bringing women together and bringing women's voices, and I definitely believe in that, like feminist art, feminist theory and writing, and I believe in that, as long as we have more. Thank you for the question.
I'm sorry, I guess I have a question about perception. I guess mainly for the two gentlemen who are in Africa, I'm wondering how different the perceptions would be for people whose home culture it is, and for people who are seen as outsiders and who will not be there for the rest of their lives. I guess all the panelists can answer this to some extent, but that's what I was thinking.
I think for me, going in, especially going to South Africa as a white person, we were pretty much told that it was going to be very hard for us. And, and as Jeff said, you're already weird when you get there because you're a white person living in their villages or their townships, so that already makes you weird, and the gay thing would probably not matter. When I moved into the white town, it definitely would have mattered. It would have been completely different. And I think that's kind of that's how I viewed the culture too. In the black community, it definitely seemed different if the lady identified as a lesbian. She definitely looked much more down upon than a man was, unless he was a bottom. In the white community, it just seemed wrong on all accounts. But as Jeff said, you're already weird, especially being a white person going into their place.
I think I touched on this a little bit. I think they do have as much as it's not talked about, they do have a word for it, and it's the French word for fag. Is the word that they use for gay. And I never met any lesbians in Madagascar, and I've never heard of any of them existing in Madagascar. I'm sure they do, I just never heard of them. And there was one gay man in Tana, in the capital, is what the Peace Corps told us. Justin was saying, I think we got kind of a free ride because we were white, and it's a completely different story if you're African or if you're Malagasy, and I think a lot of it has to do with because they have to abide by the taboos that I don't have to abide by.
Can I add something? I think, I've never been to Romania, but I spent quite a lot of time in Hungary, which is a neighboring country, and it is probably the most conservative country nowadays in the EU. I think the problem of perception in Eastern Europe is people know that there are gay people, and the official discourse has it that gay people have rights and that they cannot be discriminated against because, well, since all these countries are now part of the EU, they have to abide by certain principles. But my impression is that they cannot even imagine that among themselves there are actual gay people living. So they have these laws about how you cannot discriminate against gay people, but for them they apply as much as laws regarding how you cannot discriminate against people who can fly, because they know nobody can fly anyway. So these laws exist, but what are they good for? Because nobody is gay, and I had the impression when I was there that nobody would have ever thought I was gay unless I told them. I made a point of telling absolutely everybody that I met at some point that I was gay, just as an educational.
They would never assume it.
Never. They thought, and in Hungary they had this thing where they would say, oh, what do you think about Hungarian women? All the time. Every single person, man or woman that I met, asked me how I liked Hungarian girls. So I always told them, well, they're okay, but I like Hungarian boys better. Just so that they would sort of come to realize that there are gay people and that they look normal, because over there, unless you are RuPaul, nobody would think that you are gay.
But doesn't Hungary produce an amazing amount of porn films, gay porn especially?
Yes, but it's true, but that is like sort of the porn industry, I guess, is different. And
yeah, but we're also talking about like the perception is different from rural area to urban area. Like in the cities, people are going to be like, oh, okay, there's gay people, fine. You're seeing on TV, you're seeing everywhere. Countryside, my town, in the village, it's non-existent concepts.
Anybody else have any questions? Or anything to add? Any of the panelists want to make any last comments? Jingqiao, do you have any last comments or anything? Or
No, not really. Just thank you for this opportunity.
yeah, I'd personally like to thank all the panelists for doing this tonight and being with us. Let's have a round of applause.
Thank you for moderating, Mike.
Oh, yeah, Jingqiao, I'd love you to join us here in California for a drink. We're going out now, but whenever you're in California, you have to look us up and come hang out if you're in California. I'll be emailing you, okay?
Okay, cool.
Thank you so much, Jingqiao.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Good night. Bye.
Bye.
So we're gonna go out. If you guys want to come, I think we're Lollapalooza, unless anyone has any other suggestions. I just figured it's right downtown. You can go grab a drink, talk, meet, talk with the panelists one-on-one if you want. If the panelists want to come out for a drink.
I don't have homework, so.
No one wants to talk to Jesse.
So, thank you everyone for coming. I really appreciate your support, and come join us for a drink if you'd like. Thank you.
So where are we going for drinks?
Lollapalooza.